Okay, you
We're
guys.
now live, Chairman.
Hello, thank you. Well, we'll make a start. Good afternoon and welcome to all members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Fire Service YouTube page, and also to you members for logging on. We're more than quorum. The quorum number for this meeting is 6. Due to government guidance on social distancing, this meeting has been held remotely in accordance with the provisions set out in the local authorities and police and crime panels panel meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020. Minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the Fire Service's YouTube page. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I'd ask all members to keep their video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting. Keep the microphone muted, except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any member wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function on the right-hand side of the screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow the officer to respond. Janet, that may not be possible for you. If you want to speak and you haven't got a function, just wave your hand and we'll see you.
I will, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. As with all new arrangements, especially those involving new systems, there is always a risk that we may run into technical problems. If we do so, I'd ask for your patience. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed, and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. You'll note that details for an additional meeting after this one have been circulated, should it be necessary to discuss anything in part 2. At this stage, I do not anticipate using that facility, but it is there should the need arise. We'll establish who's here first. We'll begin by calling the names of all members to establish your presence. Please confirm your presence when Dawn calls your name. Dawn.
Councillor Barbara Ashwood.
Here, Miss.
Councillor Andrew Bond. I don't believe Councillor Bond's joined us yet. Councillor Simon Bywater.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Ian Gardner.
Present.
Councillor Derek Giles.
I'm here.
Councillor Janet Goodwin.
Here.
Councillor John Gowing.
Present.
Councillor Bill Hunt.
Well, he was here.
He's here. Yeah, we can see him. Yeah.
Yes, I am here. Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. Councillor Mohammed Jamil. I don't think he's joined us yet. Councillor Sebastian Kindersley.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Councillor Mac Maguire.
Present.
Councillor David Over.
Present.
Councillor Kevin Reynolds.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Jocelyn Scott.
Present.
Councillor Mike Shellens.
Here.
And Councillor Mandy Smith.
Present.
Right, thank you for that. Before I hand over to the monitoring officer for the next item, can I particularly give a warm welcome to Councillor Goodwin and Giles? And I know both of them have not enjoyed the best of health in recent weeks and months. So pleased to see you here.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're most welcome. I'd now like to hand over to the monitoring officer for the first item. Shaheen.
Thank you, Chairman. So first item is the election of chairman, and I think Dawn is going to preside over the taking of nominations.
Do I have any nominations for chairman? Councillor Over.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn. I'd like to propose Councillor Reynolds for chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you.
Who was that? Sorry.
Councillor Ashwood.
Councillor Ashwood. Right. Do I have any further nominations? No. Therefore, I declare Councillor Kevin Reynolds the Chairman of the Fire Authority for the municipal year 2020-21. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, members, for your continuing support.
Well done, Kevin.
Thank you, Shaheen and Dawn. We'll now move on to the appointment of Vice Chairman. And from the Chair, and for continuity, I'd like to propose Councillor Over. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'd like to second Councillor Over, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further nominations? No. Thank you. Councillor Over, it's confirmed you're Vice Chairman for the municipal year 2021. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dawn, can you report any apologies for absence, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Harford. We're still missing Councillors Bond and Jamil. Hopefully they'll join us at some point.
Okay, thank you. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest at this stage? No. Okay, we'll move on. Minutes of the Fire Authority meeting held on 6th of February, notes of the meeting held on the 30th of March. We've been asked to approve the minutes of the meeting, the 6th of February, and the notes of the meeting held on the 30th of March as correct record. Can I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal to either click the raised hand function on the right of your screen or to indicate accordingly? No, thank you. Right, I see no objections to this proposal to approve the minutes as correct record, so we'll take that as carried. On that basis, the recommendations for approval of the minutes is carried, and I'll sign hard copies when we return back to the office. Next item, item 5, Chairman's announcements. These have been previously circulated, and I do not intend to go through them and read them verbatim. What I will do is pull up the highlights, the judicial review update. And again, I've given you a short text in addition to the letter that was circulated from the Minister last week, which came as a very pleasant surprise to us all, I'm sure. Could I invite Shaheen to update us further and any comments you may wish to add? Shaheen.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, members, I think have all had a copy of the letter in which the Secretary of State has set out that they are not going to act on the transfer of governance to the Police and Crime Commissioner because of everything that's happened. I thought it would just be helpful because we've got potentially 3 judicial reviews that we're involved with. So I'll just remind members of where each of those is and what the implications of the letter are. So we'll remember that the main judicial review was launched after the Secretary of State decided to transfer governance to the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I was just reminding myself of the dates. That decision was made on the 26th of March of 2018. And that followed, of course, a year or more of preparation for that through the business case process. So it's a long drawn out process. We had the hearing eventually of the judicial review last year, just over a year ago, and the decision in July last year, where although we succeeded in arguing that the 3 E's test, if you remember, hadn't been properly applied, the decision went against us because the court found that even if the Secretary of State had applied the 3 E's properly, the result would have been the same. So we lost that judicial review. So the governance, the decision to transfer governance was made by the High Court. We appealed that. we
Sorry.
appealed that. No, that's all right. But we were unsuccessful on appeal. So the Secretary of State could have implemented that decision. But of course, we've had the letter now to say that the government doesn't intend to implement that decision. They've called it a pause. So some of the language of the letter doesn't give full comfort as to what happens if a new business case comes along. If the Secretary of State is happy with it, will he or she, whoever it is at the time, simply invoke the High Court decision and effect? So I'm writing to the Secretary of State legal team, just asking for absolute clarity on that. We want them to make a legal undertaking not to ever implement that decision. And if a new business case comes along, to go through the whole process of consultation, getting SIPFA involved, and redo the whole lot. So at every stage, we can see if they're including us or not. They haven't given us that absolute clarity. So we will seek that. If we don't get that, we will apply to the court to actually quash that order in light of what the Secretary of State is now saying. So we should get absolute clarity. That deals with JR1. You'll remember that we had to submit 2 subsequent judicial reviews. So JR2, as we're calling it, asked the Secretary of State to review the governance decision on the basis that the business case had changed, because at that time we had the St. Neots and St. Ives proposals, which weren't going to happen. And then, of course, when we heard about Monkswood, and that really put the nail in the coffin of the business case, we issued a Judicial Review 3 to pick up on the Monkswood development. Both JR2 and JR3 are in abeyance. We applied for a stay. So we've been invited to withdraw those. So again, as I've just explained, we're going to write to the Secretary of State to say, look, you need to withdraw your decision on JR1. And once we've got that, at the same time, we consent to withdrawing JR2 and JR3. So we do it all together. So there's no confusion on anyone's side about where we are with the legal proceedings. So it's no risk as such. I mean, even if the Secretary of State, that's me being very cautious and dotting every I and crossing the T. We've got the commitment that JR1 won't be implemented. I think if the Secretary of State tried to implement it on the back of a new business case without going through the whole process again, we would have good grounds, because it would be unreasonable and irrational for them to do that. We would have good grounds, I think, for a fresh judicial review, which none of us want. So I think we're just better clarifying that they're never going to try and resurrect the decision that they've got from the High Court. So that's where we are. That letter will go off imminently. And fingers crossed that's the last we hear of governance takeover under this particular business case. Of course, it might come back after a new PCC is elected in March 2021, but that's a matter to be looked at then. So Chairman, sorry that's taken a while, but I hope that's a fulsome response about where we are with the 3 judicial reviews. And of course, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Shaheen. I had to smile when you said about absolute clarity from the government. That's very wishful thinking. I'm not sure we'll ever get to that stage, but one can hope. Members, have you got any questions to Shaheen? And depending on what they are, we can decide if we need to go in private session. No, Shaheen, you obviously explained that very clearly. Like I said at the introduction, that letter came out of the blue from the Minister, and that was a pleasant surprise.
Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Giles.
Yeah, just like a little bit of clarification. If a new bid, we'll call it a bid, was erected, would it come from the new PCC or from the government?
Shaheen.
The original one came from the government, didn't it?
So,
Shaheen, you answer that.
Yeah, so you'll have seen from the letter that the Home Secretary is saying the government is still very supportive of a change of governance as a principle. So they haven't let go of the principle, but it has to be started. The legislation says it has to be started by a police and crime commissioner making a business case, which has to go through a process. So there would have to be, we know there's nothing going to happen until there is a permanent PCC appointed next year. And if that PCC wants to make a business case, I think it would have to be a very different business case. And then that would start the whole process again.
It's PCC led. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, very much.
Okay. No other questions at this stage. Oh, sorry, Councillor Over.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a comment, basically, another question. I've welcomed what Shaheen has been saying, and I think that gives us a good defence. We don't want to go along to the government and say, oh, well, we'll withdraw JR2 and JR3, and we trust that everything will go along according to what we wish, and thank you very much. We need to have some defence, and I think this gives us a defence to go back to in case of anybody resurrecting this kind of process. So any new PCC will have to go through everything all over again. It's going to take years, and maybe he's got better things to do if in fact PCCs exist in a couple of years' time.
Nobody knows. That's a crystal ball job. We just keep doing what we're doing in the Fire Authority for the good of the community. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Yes, Sebastian, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Congratulations on your reappointment. As you know, we are not a terribly political organisation, and we are not, and politics doesn't often rear its head. But this is an opportunity to have a measure of influence, because obviously with elections for the Police and Crime Commissioner taking place in May next year, it will be useful to know from all of the candidates, and I don't know whether any of the parties have appointed a candidate yet, but it will be useful to know prior to the event what their position is going to be in regards to a potential takeover of the service by any future PCC. So I just suggest that we all keep that, as it were, at the forefront of our minds as we cast our ballots for our candidates for each respective party.
Thank you. That's a very relevant and good point. I'm sure that the Conservative members of this authority have it in their mind to lobby whoever's selected with a good argument that were presented in the past. And I've no doubt that'll happen from the other parties. Like you say, this is not a political organisation per se, and it's a good example how cross-party working to the benefit of the community. Any other comments before we move on? No, thank you for those comments. They're very helpful. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just caught your hand as I was moving on. So I'm trying to juggle 2 or 3 screens here.
I know. It's really, yeah, thanks so much, Chair. I mean, I know that you will say thank you to Shaheen, Chair, at the end of this particular item, but I wanted to say thank you too, because judicial review is one of the areas that I've practiced in and that I teach in. And it really, I mean, it has been a terrific experience to be involved at this practical level. And the work that Shaheen has done, of course, with the council that we appointed, has really been excellent. And so I want to thank her particularly, though, of course, I know, Chair, you will too. So thank you, Shaheen. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those kind comments. And I think it goes without saying, but we have said in the past, we do value Shaheen very highly, and I think we're lucky to have her. And indeed, we've got a great QC as well. So those comments were well made. We're still on my announcements. Firefighter Will Baker. That's a very sad occurrence. A letter was sent on behalf of the Fire Authority. Was somebody wishing to speak then? No, sorry, okay. Yeah, a letter was sent to the family on behalf of the Fire Authority, in addition to the comfort and support given by the Chief Fire Officer and other senior members of the service. And COVID arrangements, that seems to be a rapidly moving scenario. Well, we're on top of it at the moment. Right, let's move on to item 6, Fire Authority virtual meeting protocols. Can I ask Shaheen as the monitoring officer to introduce this report, please? Thank you. Shaheen.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is just a formal agenda item to ask you to adopt the protocol that we're already in, meetings via Zoom. And I think virtual meetings are here for some time before we return to normality. So I think we're going to all have to get used to it. I don't want to say too much because members are already using virtual meetings very successfully in your parent council organisations. Just some key points. Obviously, everyone has got their camera on, I think, but if you are on and you have got a camera, please ensure that you can be seen, because that's one of the requirements, to be seen where possible. If you can't be seen and you've got technology problems, obviously just that's absolutely fine. In terms of voting, Dawn will do a roll call, but any non-contentious items we're proposing that we just do the raised hand options. I hope everybody can see the raised hand options and knows how to use it. If you don't, please do say. I'd say indicate by raised hands, but that wouldn't be quite right. And please keep your mics off when you're not speaking, but do remember to unmute when you are speaking. It's a favourite trick of mine. And other than that, I just ask you to formally adopt the protocol. It seems to be working via Zoom. We are keeping it under review to see if there are other technologies that work better, but this does seem to work well. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Well, we know Councillor Goodwin's having issues with her equipment at the moment, and I don't think it's possible for her to vote in the manner that you suggested by pressing hand. On items such as this, it's permissible if there is a consensus view that we agree to it. It's not necessary to take a formal vote, is it?
Yes, that's what we're saying. If there's a consensus view and it's a non-contentious item, we're just happy to take the recommendation as read.
That's excellent. Okay. Members, any questions or comments on what Shaheen's just taken us through? Is there general agreement that we accept this? Oh, yes, Sebastian, and
I did have my raised hand up.
Oh, you did. Oh, well, and David, yes.
Thanks for that, Chairman. All I wanted to say was thank you very much for doing this in a very much simpler manner than other organisations that I am aware of. So as usual, we lead where others follow. But one thing I would like just to highlight, and that is this, that whilst this may carry on for the foreseeable future, I think it is beholden to us to consider the importance of actually continuing like this, regardless of what happens. There are currently 22 participants in this meeting, and if you add together all of their mileage, there is a significant cost to that sort of thing, and that isn't to take into account either the significant environmental impact of all of those vehicles travelling around the countryside, and of course significant impact on our time. It takes me a good 40 minutes to get to HQ, and I imagine that I'm one of the shorter journeys. So I think we should be planning to maintain the use of Zoom or whatever technology we come up with as best forever. And if a face-to-face meeting is required, and I accept that that is occasionally going to be necessary, then so be it. But the default position, I would argue, should be through a screen. That's all.
Thank you for that comment. That was something that's been at the back of my mind for a while. Yes, Councillor Over, I'll call you in just a second.
Okay.
It's something that we may well give a view to having a firm policy on. Are there any immediate barriers to that, Shaheen? If we decide to have all of our meetings via Zoom in the future, all except, say, the annual meeting, would that be a problem?
So, Chairman, at the moment, the regulations that allow virtual meetings are in existence until May 2021. So the government would have to, I think, extend that period. But certainly for that period, we have got the ability to hold virtual meetings. I've seen that the LGA have recently taken some advice from, in fact, it was Peter Oldham, who we've used on our judicial review, who has advised that where you've got the ability to do virtual meetings, then meetings should be held virtually with minimal attendance in person. I will circulate that advice because it's open advice to local authorities. So I think we do need to look at the future and what the future looks like. You know, lots of organisations are looking at what the workforce return to work looks like, and the days of everybody filing into offices, I think, are a thing of the past. Certainly in the public sector, lots of councils are planning for partial lockdown at all times. So I think we ought to explore that, and we will.
Thank you. Well, I think we can probably work up a draft policy or suggestions for detailed discussions in the future. And when I say that, I'm looking at Matthew. Perhaps there's something he can put in the pipeline to work up a paper to come to the Fire Authority for what we can do in the future. Councillor Over, you're waiting to speak.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Basically, all three of you have said almost exactly what I wanted to say, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Giles.
Am I on? Yes, I am on, I think. Yeah, Chairman, I don't know. I mean, I know we don't have any other business or anything like that. Lord above, for me to preempt what you're going to say, because I'm sure you're going to mention somewhere along the line today about Aggie.
What?
Aggie.
Aggie?
Aggie, yes. Aggie.
That's terminology.
One of our rising star young ladies in the fire service. Oops. No? It's in the Hunts Post, and I'm very, very proud of the fact that she operates out of St Neots. But I'm sure one of the officers will bring that up in their speeches. Now I've reminded them.
It hasn't been, Hunts Post is not widely circulated.
No.
And most of the members, myself included, probably wouldn't be aware of that. But
yeah,
we will have a look.
Well done. Thank you.
Mandy, were you wishing to say anything? No, you're okay. Right, we're going back to this policy.
You seem to have ignored me, Chair. I've been had my...
I did. It wasn't on purpose. I do beg your pardon. And Mac and Matthew. You first, Bill.
Well, I accept what Councillor Kindersley has talked about pollution, and that's a valid point. And he's also talked about the cost of getting people about, and that's a good, the mileage claims, and that's a good point. And also it's worthy of note that you can do perhaps 2 Zoom meetings in an afternoon, and if you'd have to drive somewhere, you could probably only do 1. I accept all that, but I'm very uncomfortable that we should sort of try and lock in stone a default. And I think we should take a leaf out of Parliament's book, where they're trying to get back to the personal interaction between people, even if they're travelling from the north of Scotland. And they are trying to get this personal, and we at the moment have the luxury of knowing most of the people involved on your screen because you've met them and you've talked to them. Well, I think if we have a new council where we don't know each other, I think a lot of the nuances and the way that a business is done, the cup of coffee beforehand and the chats there, I think it would be very dangerous to write in stone that we were going to return to that. I think there's an argument to say that the chair, if there's not anything contentious, say, could have a virtual meeting and decide it. But if you've got something that is significant, like a bid from to discuss a bid from a police and crime commissioner about a new thing, that wants to be done face to face. And I think to just say, oh, our default is to go to virtual, I think is dangerous and not to be encouraged. That's my view.
Well, thank you for that. Your view's most welcome. What we'll do, as suggested earlier on, is work up a draft paper on this subject, and then everybody can put their views and we'll decide how we go ahead for the future. We'll continue for the foreseeable future, because that's long as the legislation lasts. Mac, you're waiting to contribute.
No, that's fine, Kevin. It's been answered. I'll liaise with Shaheen and just
Sure.
make sure that we get it done.
Mac, did you want to?
Yeah, hi, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you made reference to maybe we need to look at this. I think if there's been an upside to this lockdown, it has been the increase in the use of conference calling, whether it's with video or not. I mean, I personally have been an advocate of conference call for a long time. I can remember 4 or 5 years ago having what I thought was just going to be an ordinary telephone conversation with my opposite number or GSS, and it turned out we were actually doing a video. And I thought, wow, why don't we use this more often? And it's quite appropriate, I think, to use it when you have an informal meetings. Say, for instance, when I have to go down for a chairman's briefing down in Cambridge for a 20-minute meeting, it seems rather daft, you know. Why don't we use this method? But we do have to remember, when it comes to formal meetings, not just the annual meeting, but quarterly meetings, whatever, it's the participation as well. It isn't as easy, from my own experience, for the public to get as involved. I know when we did a full county council meeting, we were one of the first. It was very difficult, particularly when you've got people who want to come public. So I think we do need to look at it in the round and say, notwithstanding some of the technological difficulties, and for many of us it's been a steep learning curve, but there is an appropriate time, I believe, to use virtual meetings. But we do have to think it through very carefully to remember that there's an awful lot of other people who would expect to see us in public, whether it be at the fire headquarters or the county council chamber or city or whatever. So we do have to look at it in the round, I believe.
I think you again, very, very fair comments. Let's see the finer details that are brought forward to us. We meet infrequently anyway during the course of the year, so it may well be that we can agree upon full fire authority meetings, physical, and committee meetings virtual. That might be a way forward. We're not making a decision tonight on our meetings. It's just the policy we're agreeing. Any other couples?
Yes, Chair, I've asked to come back if I may.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's that someone referred to the Act of Parliament, which said that the virtual meetings could go on. That was consent to continue till May next year. It wasn't a target. It was permission to hold meetings. And so we shouldn't say, oh, well, we're going automatically till May. The Act of Parliament says we will be allowed to go to that date should it be necessary. It's a bit different of, and I think we should bear that in mind. It's not an instruction you stay with virtual till May. The House of Commons has gone back to a mixture already because they know that's the best way to communicate.
Okay, well, I think we all understood that anyway, but I wouldn't hold the House of Commons up as a pinnacle of holding useful meetings, to be honest.
Well, they make the laws that we run our organisation by.
That is true. That is true. Anyway, I'm not going to debate that in detail. We're just going to agree this policy or not. Now, anybody else before we move on? Councillor Jamil, good to see you. Oh, you're gone again. Blimey, that was quick. Never mind. Let's see. Is there anybody who does not agree to this protocol? No? Okay, we'll move on then. Draft number 7, draft annual governance statement. Can I ask Matthew to introduce this report, please? Matthew.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, councillors. Just give you a brief overview in terms of the report itself. You'll appreciate this is a statutory requirement. We have to produce an annual governance statement that sets out effectively the controls that we have in place that guarantee the safeguard of, if you like, our organisation and certainly the financial side of the organisation. So this statement looks to articulate what those are, and there are things that we've got various controls that members will be well aware of, things like programme management that ensure that when we start a major project that there is the sufficient controls and documentation in place to make sure that we deliver against those projects. Things like internal audit that clearly comment every year in terms of whether they think we've got the appropriate management controls. And just as a matter of interest, this year they've given us a positive statement that will be going to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as part of the annual report. But which is a positive. In terms of the other aspects that we go over and above, so we have various British standards on items such as information security and business continuity, amongst other things. And those things that are most important to us, we tend to actually seek, if you like, additional assurance from people like British standards. We've got various other mechanisms which help us control things. So things like schemes of delegations that, again, as a fire authority, you will all be aware of, you would have seen in the past, and you would have approved that scheme of delegation to make sure that decisions are taken at the appropriate level. In terms of where we are, or where we were for 2019-20, there was 2 elements that came out of internal audits work, and those 2 elements were around our CFRMIS system and also our human resources, which is actually a system for recording our training. So they're both records, effectively. Both of those have had significant, I can give you the assurance now that both of those are significant improvement plans have been implemented since these audits were complete. And CFRMIS, certainly we now have a dedicated team structure in place to make sure that information is now recorded in the correct manner, because that was the issue. It wasn't necessarily being recorded in the correct manner. And the same with our track system, which was a new system that was introduced. But again, we've been on a journey for the last 3 or 4 months to make sure that has been enhanced and improved significantly to ensure that the records are recorded appropriately by our operational frontline crews. So there's a little, I think every item that I'm going to say COVID-19 or coronavirus, I apologise, but there's an element around business continuity, and perhaps Chris or John will come in just in terms of the arrangements that we've put in place to give you the reassurance that things are happening and have been happening in I would suggest a very professional and appropriate manner. So just in conclusion, this year is a positive statement from our head of internal audit, but clearly we don't rest on our laurels, and we make sure that we have the appropriate governance arrangements in place. So that's an overview. Any questions on the actual statement itself?
Thank you. Matt, your blue hand is still up. Is it meant to be?
Chairman, my blue hand wasn't still up. I've just raised it again.
Oh, okay.
Immediately after the last time. However, notwithstanding that, so it's more, if I may, a comment. As Matthew's mentioned in the report, one of the internal financial controls, of course, is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And unfortunately, as we know, we had to cancel that in April because of the lockdown, and that was before we were able, given permission to use these virtual meetings. But I'm just wanted to say I'm quite happy. I can't speak obviously for the rest of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but certainly on a personal level, I'm very happy with the governance statement, and I know that's what we're being asked to approve today. But as chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny, I thought I ought to just support that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and they're very, very relevant from the Overview and Scrutiny side. Any other points of clarification, questions? We're being asked to approve the annual governance statement as attached in the appendix. Is there anybody dissenting? Anybody not wishing to approve it? If not, I'm going to take it as a unanimous approval. No, can't see no blue hands and I can't see nobody waving. Okay. Oh, Jamil, yes, please. Hello there. I can see you. Councillor Jamil.
I can hear it. No, I just certainly echo Councillor Maguire's points that at least, you know, whilst it's not the end of the story, it's a step in the right direction. And I think we need to start lobbying early and get in there as soon as we can.
Right. Yeah. Fair comment. Fair comment. Okay. So that's a unanimous agreement on that. Item 8, annual report and statement of assurance. This was emailed out to you separately to the rest of the agenda last Friday. Can I now ask Matthew to introduce this report, please? Matthew.
Thank you, Chairman. So it's quite a large document, and I appreciate if you're reading it on the screen, it would be probably difficult to take it all in. But I'm just going to pick up on some highlights. And then perhaps whether John or Chris want to add anything or any questions that between the three of us we can pick off. So just in terms of the summary, you'll see at the start we go through the year and we give an overview of some of the highlights. So again, just picking up on some of those for members. We had the let me get to the right bit because John attended. Yeah, in June we had the Asian Fire Service Association, where we got a second place award for excellence in board leadership for equality, diversity and inclusion. John went along to that, so I don't know if John wants to add anything in terms of that was quite an achievement and not something we probably had expected.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I mean, it was a great event, and it's a very well respected organisation in this area, and there were some really good examples there from the other services of the work they've done, and to come second nationally was a real achievement for us.
Who came first?
I can't remember off the top of my head, Chairman. I can find out for you.
Who beat us, John?
Okay.
So. Yeah, just moving along, in August, you'll see that we had some of you remember, we had the large fire in Peterborough at Hot Point, where they had 50 trailer units go up. So there's a lot of, but again, our rapid intervention, we did a good job, really great from an operational perspective. So that was a highlight. In September, interestingly, we had a contingent from the Shanghai Municipal Defence Office come over just to look at how a fire and rescue service in the UK works. I thought I'd raise that just in case anybody else did. In terms of January, for those of you that were able to attend, we had our annual awards evening, which highlighted some fantastic achievements. I think the one that sort of sticks with me was where one of our operational firefighter sisters, we were called to help give life-saving CPR, and we did that, and it was really great achievement by all, because they saved her, and she's
your sound keeps drifting in and out, Matthew.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So shout if you have to.
I'll shout if I have to. Okay. Well, can you hear me all? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can now. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I'll carry on. So a lot of the rest of it is around just context, around if you like, some of the less interesting stuff that has to be included in the annual report. Before Councillor Kingsley says it, yes, I know my photo does need updating because my hair doesn't look particularly grey there. So that's one for Hayley to act upon. There's some legislative stuff that we need to put in, but then sort of if we skip ahead, again, some of the other highlights, and they're in the case studies. The engagement survey, I think, is worth pointing out. We've gone from a 60% engagement rate to a 66% engagement rate. And again, Chris may want to add something, but that should be seen as a real achievement for the service and the authority as a whole. And again, probably welcome Chris there if he wants to talk about it, just what that really means, because it does mean total engagement from the vast majority of our staff. The donor service, we've had, you can see our fire stations are being used by blood donors across the county, and that continues to be a real positive for us. And the only other thing I wanted to highlight, and again, is in the ops excellence, is smoke curtains. And not least, I want to mention it because I'm not actually sure I know what a smoke curtain is, and perhaps John or Chris can explain it to members. But hopefully you'll get a sense there's some real positives within the annual report. Another great year for the service and the authority, and really just any questions that any members may have. Just worth adding, I suppose, this is draft, so please don't be too critical around the format at the moment. Hayley was hoping with the team to actually reformat it this year, but with COVID and things, she's been a little bit busy. So I think we're going to do a rehash next year when we get there in terms of structure. But please, any questions or any comments Chris or John want to make?
Okay, I can't see any blue hands at the Chris, yes, please.
Yeah, Chair. And I won't prolong it too long, but just to say, I think that the two things that are important for me is one, as Matt said, is our engagement score, and just to reiterate that's around our staff and how engaged they are within the organisation. And it's a difficult thing to get one member of staff fully engaged. So that means they are motivated in the motivated, they enjoy coming to work, and they're firm advocates of the service. And we firmly believe that if we can get that situation with everybody, then we will become the best service we can be, because we will get the most from our staff. So the national average across public and private sector is around 45% of staff being fully engaged. So for us to reach 66% is a real accolade, and it's a massive reflection on how well our staff are working, how valued they feel, and how they're driving for improvement. And you've only got to look at our score in terms of the HMI report. So an inspection report that demonstrated we are good across all areas of business without any exception is pretty impressive. One other area I just wanted to mention, and it's something that's dear to my heart, is I remember a couple of years back we were talking about the amount of money that the National Health Service was spending on blood donor sessions, having to hire out halls. So to see us now with a number of our stations facilitating the blood donor service, still being open now, even though in spite of the COVID epidemic, assisting the NHS to take blood and to keep people safe. I'm really proud about that. And actually, I think I'm now my 11th pint of blood since it started. So I've been giving blood to the NHS too. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on that, and thank you for pointing it out. There's an awful lot of good work going on that we don't always see. And if any member really wants to know about some of the work, is to contact either John Anderson or Hayley, our communications officer. You'll be surprised at what's going on out in the community. Janet, you wish to speak. Put your volume on, Janet.
I've got it.
That's it. You can hear you now.
I just wanted to comment and thank the staff for the daily COVID staffing updates, because it's really important for us to know how staffing are going through this period of time, and the additional information that we get. Really pleased with that, and thanks to everybody for it.
Thank you for those kind comments. And I did say about the work that goes on in the community behind the scenes. And there are so many different branches of that, and not least Firebreak, which some of you are aware of. If you're not aware of Firebreak, then please take the opportunity to get updated on it. There's some excellent work going on in the community, which isn't always acknowledged. But anybody else wish to make a comment at this stage? Yes, Sebastian, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the Chief was being very modest by leaving out the fact that, of course, an organisation is only as good as its senior leadership team. And so I think it's an opportune moment to pay tribute to our senior officers, because it is their leadership and guidance that has led to such extremely good results in the course of not just the last year, but actually several last years. And I really feel we should note our thanks and our commendation for all the work that they put in. And I know it's over and above what they're actually paid to do, but they're doing it because presumably they're some of the people who enjoy coming to work and responded to that survey that demonstrated, you know, just what a good organisation it is to work for. So I'm sure, Chairman, you will take the necessary steps to pass on the gratitude and thanks of the Fire Authority members.
Thank you for those kind comments. We are blessed with an exceptional senior management team, but it doesn't just end there. If you look down from the senior management team, we have got some outstanding personnel.
Yeah.
The future looks really good in Cambridgeshire. And part of that is part of the selection process that's been put in place by our senior managers now. We really have got a good team. We're strong in all places, but that doesn't mean we should be complacent, either senior officers or us as the Fire Authority. We've got to be looking for the next step on, and I know that they've got their eye on improving even further. I'm sure Chris will probably be too embarrassed, and Matthew, to say anything, but if they wish to, they could.
Kevin.
Yes, Matthew.
Just really thanks for that, but reiterate really that, you know, whilst, you know, we set the direction, you know, we have some wonderful people. We have some absolute, I mean, just this COVID crisis has just demonstrated to us, I'm sure Chris will add to it, just how lucky we are as an organisation, because everybody, and I can think without any exception, have just pulled together and delivered. You know, literally within 24 hours, everybody was mobilised and they've just got on with it. It's been really, really, you know, humbling for us, I would say, to see. It really has.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Ashwood, then Councillor Scott. Councillor Ashwood.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little thing on the sort of outreach that's been going on. Last October, the community centre here, we had a family fun day. And Cambridge Station said if they could, they would send a fire engine along, which they duly did. The poor guys stood out in the freezing cold for hours, had the vehicle climbed over by so many children you wouldn't believe it, got called away to a shout and still came back afterwards to finish off the afternoon. We were really grateful to them. The children and the families thought it was wonderful. So another example of what our wonderful service is doing.
Thank you for that example. Quite often little things go unnoticed by some. That is a good example. And I'm sure as long as they were supplied with copious hot tea, they'd have stayed there long as you'd have wanted them. Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to say, again, just to add to those that have said how positive it is in terms of the staff engagement, because that really is a positive outcome, that generally speaking, the staff are engaged in terms of being enthusiastic and enjoying the work that they're doing. That's really important. The other point I wanted to make, but I'm actually just reflecting, I think we've had a meeting at which I've already said this, but I'll add it now because the reports come out, and that is that it's so positive to get the reports about the fires that have happened around the place. And particularly, I want to thank the service for the work that they did in relation to the Kingsway Flats in Arbury, which I represent. And it was very positive work they did. And they had equipment even to assist the animals that were in distress that unfortunately were not able to be saved. But I think it's really a positive thing that we have a fire service that's concerned about the human beings, the buildings and the animals, because all of them are at risk. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that acknowledgement. You're absolutely right. All of our staff are aware of the things that are important to the community, whether they be pets, animals, buildings or whatever. And thank you for acknowledging that. Who have I got now? Councillor Ashwood, you don't want to speak, or do you? No, you've got your blue hand up. That's what's throwing me. Okay. Are we all in agreement? We're asked to agree the draft annual report and statement of assurance. So far, I've seen no dissenters. So unless anybody indicates differently, for the record, we're all in agreement. Yeah. Thank you. Right, item 9, review of the integrated risk management plan performance. And can I ask John Anderson to introduce this report? Over to you, John, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. The purpose of this report is to provide an overview and an update of our delivery of the previous RMP, which ran from 2016 to 2020. That RMP finished at the end of March of this year and was replaced with our new RMP, which will run till 2024. Hopefully you've had a chance to review the report. The first part of the report sets out the work we've done and some examples against all of the commitments made in our previous RMP. And you'll see there's some really good work there, and it does highlight how much we've actually delivered over those last 4 years. Some of the examples you've already mentioned and Matt's mentioned earlier, but are probably worth re-mentioning again. The fire break, it has been rolled out during this period and it's now embedded. That's a really important initiative. We're getting some fantastic feedback about it. In terms of our operational response, we've invested significantly in improving our rescue from height. We now have a dedicated rope rescue team, which has actually carried out a rescue already. We have improved our water rescue capability, as well as the training for dealing with water rescues. And we're in the process of having 2 new turntable ladders to assist with working from height and high-rise fires, which will really add to our capability and our fleet. In terms of our people, we've kicked off a lot of work and done a lot of work already in terms of identifying the future leaders of our service and making sure they receive all the development they need. So that was just a very brief overview of some of the fantastic work that our staff have delivered over this period of time. I'd like to move on now, if it's okay, to a review of our performance, which is the financial year 2019 to 2020, and that will complete the performance reporting around our previous RMP. So starting off with response times, I'm pleased to say with average attendance for the first appliance in urban areas, our performance is positive. It meets our 9-minute target, and it's actually improved from 8 minutes 44 seconds in the previous year to 8 minutes 33 last year. Our performance in rural areas, unfortunately, is outside of our 12-minute performance measure by 19 seconds. But we're doing a lot of work to understand why that is and to reduce that down. And I'm pleased to say over the last 4 months, we've met all of our performance measures in this area, apart from on one occasion. So we are making progress in that area and things are improving. In terms of the responding to all incidents within 18 minutes for 95% of the time, our performance is remaining steady there at 94.8%, which is just under the performance measure we set ourselves. In terms of fires, the total number of fires, I'm pleased to say, was down by 272 on the previous year. We've seen less secondary fires. The number of accidental dwelling fires has remained constant. But we've also had less non-domestic fires and far less deliberate fires compared with the previous year. We had 3 fatalities last year, which is in accordance with what we had the year before, so that's remaining steady. But I'm also pleased to say that there's been a reduction in the number of casualties from fire, and that has decreased by 42%, which is a really good news story. In terms of those people killed or seriously injured on the road, that's also decreased by 42 compared with the same reporting period last year. But unfortunately, the statistics only go up to December 2019 because we rely on other parties for that data. That's the data set we've been given. In terms of corresponding, the number of calls are still down, but I think that's down to the national situation and being the only service within the region that's maintaining co-responding at this time. So that's not helping us with that, but that's something once this COVID crisis is better under control that we intend to return to and do some more work around. In terms of workforce diversity, I'm pleased to say over the last year there has been an increase in Black and ethnic minority staff from 2.6% to 3.3%, but except there's still more work to do in that area. Overall, our female workforce has increased slightly since 2015. That's gone up to 21%. There's been an increase in the proportion of females in our operational workforce, which is good, but has been balanced with a decrease in the proportion of females in our support workforce. We've also seen a slight increase in the number of female operational managers in the last 5 years. Although we are talking about very small numbers, we've gone from 2 to 5 individuals in management positions operationally. And the number of Black and ethnic minority members as managers has also increased. That's gone up from 6 to 10 people. In terms of value for money, our cost per head of population is at £30.29, which is lower than our family group and is also below the All England figure of £35 per head. But that's the performance measures I have to report on and an overview of our last RMP. Has anyone got any questions on either part of the report?
Thank you for that, John. There's some really good statistics there that reflect well on us. Questions, members?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I can see your blue hand now. Yeah. Right. Okay. Councillor Hunt, Councillor Ashwood, and then Councillor Jamil, and then Bywater.
Yeah, good afternoon. In your report, you mentioned that you're increasing the number of apprenticeships that you're working with. That's on page 17. Can you see, there's two questions I've got. One, can you see in the future that all firefighters will have done an apprenticeship? Is that the way you see the future?
Yeah, actually, all of our new recruit firefighters into the whole-time service are being taken on an apprenticeship basis. We're receiving funding for that from the apprenticeship level and going through the fire service college to deliver that. As part of that, they track them with their continued development as they move to the competence stage. And that's the last lot of recruits we got in were the first to go for it. It's been a really positive experience for the service and the individuals, and it's something we look to continue with.
Good, that's excellent news. And a typical apprentice who starts work with you now, what would be the mixture between practical work and college study? Would it be 1 day a week at college, or would it be 2 days a week, or what would be a typical sort of working week?
So it's slightly different with the fire service, because the way we do it is they go down to the fire service college for an 8-week basic training course, and that's a mixture of theory and practical application. When they come back to us, they continue to do both, but we don't actually provide them on a day release to college like would have been the case in a traditional apprenticeship in the past.
So when they start, they go, you lose them for 8 weeks when they go and get trained up. And by the time they come back to you, they're useful members of a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I would say is that we don't just hand them over to the college. We make sure our instructors and representatives of our service are down there constantly, making sure they're getting the training and support they need.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ashwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to congratulate John on yet another excellent report. I really wish we could have him to teach some of the officers at Shire Hall how to do it so that people can actually understand it. One thing I noticed, page 37, paragraph 8.6, you talk about having trebled maternity pay to firefighters. Are we allowed to ask what that has gone up to?
I don't have a figure to hand. Matt, do you know that?
I can't recall the figure off the top of my head, but I can come back to all members and let them know what that is now. But
Yeah,
I can't. I'll try and look it up while we're in the meeting.
Okay, it's just idle curiosity, but I'm delighted to see that you have made that step. It's going to make a big difference to people.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I add, Chair? It's
Yes.
Chris.
Yep.
Yeah, just on that, Councillor Ashwood, I think the initial conversation around maternity was if we really want to attract female firefighters, and we've got to offer a service where they will feel that if they do come to work for us, they won't be penalised if they want to have children. And when we looked at our maternity pay and the way we treat our staff, we were clearly somewhere at the bottom of the league. So the decision was made to improve the condition as much as we could as part of the package of trying to increase the attraction for the fire service for not just white males, but also female and people from other walks of life as well.
Thanks, Chris. That's really good to hear.
Jamil.
Thank you for that, Chair. I just got two questions. First one, going on from Councillor Hunt's question about apprenticeships. Do we also have anything in place to say take people on at degree level, like graduate recruits or not?
Not at this time, but we are looking to use the apprenticeship level to support further education for other members of staff in different roles.
Can I, am I there? Can I add as well to that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point you raised as well, Councillor, because as part of our thinking as well is around the potential for us at a future time to maybe bring in staff on two levels, because at the moment there's a bit of a dichotomy, if you like. We set our qualification standard because we know that we will have people who will go from firefighter through to chief fire officer, but it's quite a low bar. But actually, if you want to be a firefighter, it's quite a high bar for some. So the alternative is us to perhaps have not a two-tier entry as such, but a two avenue approach. So if you want to be a firefighter, then you would come in at a certain level with a certain level of qualification. If you want to go through and become a senior officer, then we would set a separate intake that's slightly higher level of qualification. And allow those people to go onto an accelerated development program where they would have access to development and then be able to apply along with others for promotions as they come. So that would then enable us to have another look at our entry standards and perhaps maybe not lower them to a point where they're not the right level, but we could be a little bit more flexible if that makes sense.
Thank you for that. That's encouraging, because I think sometimes because the police have them, other professions have them, it's just that I won't want us to miss out on some people who we're a good employer at the end of the day, and I think it would be good to have people of that standard as well. John, my second question, in regards to your BME managers, you said we've increased. What rank are we talking about here where we've got those managers?
The highest rank we've got them is at middle manager at station command level.
Thank you.
Councillor Bywater.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a very good report, John. Thank you very much. My first issue is a thanks, really. I've watched Firebreak develop over the years now, and to see where it is currently is really encouraging, especially when and I know some members have been along to the passing out parades and seen the results on these young people. So it's really good. So I'm glad to hear that's continuing. My second point is a question, really, in relation to, I guess I represent a very rural location, and I want to just pick up on the rural response times. I know that it's obviously not as good as it could be, and that is obviously an average of Cambridgeshire. What I just want, and perhaps the members of the Fire Authority want, is assurances that are there any particular hotspots, points of risk, villages at risk within that rural response time that we should be concerned about?
Yeah, thank you. No, in terms of we're happy that across the county we're able to get a good response time, bearing in mind the rural nature of the county, and we're doing a lot of work actually to make sure that we do absolutely everything possible to improve that. We've introduced roaming appliances. We now have 3 of them available, 2 7 days a week, 1 5 days a week. That has really helped because we put them out into the rural area. They're crewed as a whole-time appliance, so they can make quite a swift response to calls. We're also spending money on paying people to go to some of the rural stations to make sure they're available. So we have every day we have a team of people looking at what our fire cover looks like, moving resources around to balance it out, so we have as an effective response to fire calls in rural areas as you possibly can.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Would it be fair to say that next year's figures will be slightly different? As
Yeah, we're certainly hoping to see an improvement of the rural attendance times in next year's figures.
yeah, and is a lot of that down to on-call firefighters being more readily available to being at home during this crisis?
Yes, we certainly have seen an increase in our on-call establishment during this crisis. It's been very good. The only thing I would say is we're now starting to see that some of them are returning to their day jobs, which is bringing things back down to closer to what would be our normal level.
Yeah.
Chair, could I add to this conversation? I mean, it's a very interesting point you raise around the rural areas. And I think, you know, there is a fact. We're a very large organisation geographically, but funding wise, we're not amongst the top in the country. And as you heard earlier, we're one of the cheapest per head of population in the country. So we don't have a bottomless pit of money. But what we also know is that we have very small pockets of urban area, which we have a response time which is always going to be better because we use full-time crews than our more rural areas. So we're very focused on that as a management team. And as John said, we're putting in place as many measures as we can to support our on-call service, which, as we all know, is struggling, particularly during the day. In normal times, we find that a lot of our on-call stations aren't available. And that's because the people who live in the area don't work in the area. So quite often we struggle with attendance. So we also struggle with keeping hold of the staff when they join because there aren't that many calls. So it is a big focus for us, but there is no doubt that in the more rural areas of our county, it will take longer for us to provide a response. And we can't shy away from that. That's a fact. But what we do as an organisation is we are trying everything we can to support the on-call service as much as we can. With things like the roaming pumps, with standbys, with getting people to go and stand by on stations when we're short crews. So we're doing lots of work, but nevertheless, it still does remain a problem. We need more on-call firefighters, and we need them to stay when they join.
Okay, Simon wishes to come back, and then Matthew wishes to say something. So does Mac. Simon.
Thanks, Chris. John, this obviously has been an issue for quite some time, and I absolutely get what you've just said there. I don't have the answers to it, but can we utilise maybe some of what you've just said there in relation to? I just wondered how we communicate that to the public, and maybe use it to our advantage to try and recruit as well. I don't know the answers really.
I think it's quite complex because, and again, this is around the way the service is set up. There is no doubt there are some parts of our geographic area where we don't have on-call staff. We don't have on-call fire stations, and actually the public is used to that, and still we can provide the same level of service. We have other parts or villages, if you like, in Cambridgeshire where we have on-call fire stations, but actually they don't provide a service because there aren't enough people working there. And the reality is we still provide a decent level of service even without those stations. So something we are looking at as an organisation is, if we look at our resources and we were using them as effectively as we can, what would that look like? And would we look the same as we currently do? And I think the reality is probably not. So what we need to do, and this is something we're talking around, is we've got to focus on not fire stations and where they are. It's about firefighters and how we can get them in the most expedient way to incidents that occur. And that may require a different way of thinking to the way we currently and traditionally do it.
Okay, Mac next, then Matthew.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for coming in so late on this item, but I was just interested in the Chief Fire Officer's response to Councillor Jamil's question about what is effectively, if I understood him rightly, almost, we used to term it direct entry into the fire service, where you could come in at a different level than just as a firefighter. But what I was interested in, and it's good to see if there's been a movement towards that. I know there's been a bit of a civilianisation of posts, and we can see that in our own service. But I'm interested to see if there's been any progress. One area that many of us have argued over the years is when you've got service personnel, say RAF firefighters, retiring from the RAF, who have got considerable experience in firefighting, and yet at one time they still had to come in effectively at the ground level and go through the whole process again. Has that actually fundamentally changed? Or is there an opportunity for them to actually come in at a later stage in what would have been their normal training? Does that make sense?
It does. Sorry, John, I feel like I'm hogging your spot here.
That's fine.
Just one comment. I think I probably misled you slightly on the first part of your question. We're not suggesting that we would take people in at a higher level. What we're suggesting is we'll take people in with a high level of qualification and offer them a potential to accelerate their development through the organisation. So they would start at firefighter, but then have access to development, which then hopefully will get them through the organisation more quickly. What we're not suggesting is they would come in at high level, because the nature of our job, to put someone in at station command or group command level, they really do need to have some very sound operational experience. And I think there's arguments, and we can think about how that looks. But at the moment, what we're saying is no, maybe high level of qualification in at firefighter, work your way through. And I think that probably answers the question around your point about the RAF. At the moment, that wouldn't be something that we would offer. But what we might offer is a way to get the development needed to get through the organisation to higher levels of management. Because the thing that the RAF will teach a way of being, a way of managing, a way of managing staff, but it's not necessarily the same as we have, and actually not necessarily the same as we would like to be in a cultural way. So we're trying not to be as command and control as we used to be. We're trying to be far more inclusive and engaging, because we believe it gets the most out of people. So I would rather bring people in and train them in the way that we would like people to be, rather than just take them in and hope they are.
Thank you, Chairman, for the clarification from Chris. I understand the fast tracking, I suppose, is a way of putting it, if someone comes in at early level. Thank you.
Matthew, you wish to
say? Yeah, thank you. So just 2 points. Firstly, Councillor Ashwood, your comment around the maternity. So we used to be statutory, which was 6 weeks. We've increased that to 18 weeks full pay.
Lovely, thank you, Matthew.
Okay, so that's the first point. And the second one was really just to add to John's point around apprenticeships. So whilst we've gone down that route with firefighters, we've been doing it across the wider organisation since the apprenticeship levy and scheme was introduced by government about 2 or 3 years ago. So we have apprentices in our ICT function, fleet, business support groups. Where there's professionalism, we are seeking out apprentices, because actually we're trying to plan for the future.
Right, thank you for that answer. Are there any other points of clarification? Right, we've been asked to note the report at this stage, and we've had a nice discussion about it, so I assume it's all duly noted. We'll move on to item 10. Final revenue and capital budget position 2019-2020 in the Treasury Management Statement. Matthew.
Thank you again, Chairman. Okay, so if I take members through, so first point to raise really is members will probably already be aware from their constituent authorities that the statutory deadlines for audit and the signing of the accounts has been pushed back owing to COVID-19. So now, ordinarily, we would have been approving I would have been approving a set of accounts in May with full final sign off by the end of July. That's been changed now to the end of August the accounts have to be drafted by. As you'd appreciate, we're pretty much there or thereabouts with ours anyway, and the audit has started. But at this stage, in terms of us sort of meeting the statutory deadline, we're somewhat dependent. There is some issue around and this isn't the County Council's fault, but in terms of the audit of the County Council pension scheme, which Councillor Shellens may well be aware of, and the timing of that will obviously dictate when we can sign our accounts off, because we are party to that pension scheme. So that's just a point to raise, but I don't foresee at this stage there being any problem at all. In terms of the final position for last year, we ended up, we will end up, if members approve the carry forwards today, at a position of £715,000 underspent for the last financial year. What I'm proposing to do with that money is use it to finance capital next year, and you'll see within the reserves that actually I put it in as a straightforward, move it to general reserve and move it straight out next year to fund our capital programme the next financial year, because we have a significant capital programme that members have already approved, and there are some carry forward of schemes that were supposed to be complete by the end of March, but for various reasons, as you appreciate, they weren't at that given time. So that's where we expect to be. In terms of the detail of the position, we've had lots of, there's lots of over and underspends. Key points to pick up on are around, and it's in the first appendix, Appendix 1. We had a slight overspend on full-time firefighters, which we expected to have because we've been recruiting for the last two financial years. We expected to be more overspent than that, or did at the outset, but we've had a greater turnover than we've been able to recruit in to the service. But nevertheless, we continue to ensure that we have the appropriate level of firefighters at any given time. We underspent on our local government employees, so that's our professional support staff. We have higher turnover there generally, and you'll see that the figure looks just over 4% turnover last financial year. Just going down, IT and comms, so that's probably the major area of underspend, and that's because we've done a number of things over the last financial year. We've saved quite a significant amount of money on our new wide area network, so that saving has been built into the current financial years. Last year, when we were going through the process, we didn't realise we'd save it, clearly. So we're now in a place where we renewed with Virgin Media, but as a result of various negotiations, we were able to save money. And in addition to that, we've also saved money from our shared service with Bedfordshire. They've used more of the service than us, so they have to pay us appropriately for that use of service, which is obviously helpful for us as a fire and rescue service. Other than that, they're probably the key points I wanted to raise, and really I'll open it up for any questions. That's on the revenue budget side, so I'll take you through capital afterwards, and if members want me to go straight on to capital.
Okay, Councillor Maguire, were you wishing to ask a question? Please carry on.
Yes, please, Chairman. Well, it's more a remark. Well, first of all, thanking Matthew, because I always enjoy reading his financial reports. They're easier, sometimes easier to read. However, he did mention the underspend, which he of 715, which he's putting in reserves. But if I could draw him to 8.2, because he's a bit of a magician with his monies, because he'll add his 715 to the previous balance.
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah, I've been a right magician there, haven't I?
He spotted it now with £7 million in reserves. Which I'm
not that good, Mac. I've added a 2 to the front there, so it should be 3185. Well picked up, Mac. Thank you for that.
Yeah, but if I can come back, but his total at the bottom is right, so it's his spreadsheet is wrong.
Yeah, thank you for that.
But similarly, on Appendix 3, if I'm not jumping ahead too much, but back to earmark reserves, I noticed that on the property development reserve, the narrative still refers to Monkswood, so you might want to edit that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was just a couple of comments.
Thank you.
I just wanted him to be aware I was reading it.
No, thank you, and thank you for that, because actually that Monkswood should be updated with the SHQ and Huntingdon now as well. So.
Very impressive, Councillor Maguire. That's why you're chairman of.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else wish to raise questions at this stage before we move on to capital? No. Okay, Matthew, if you can move on, please.
Yeah, so capital is where we had significant, if you like, areas of slippage last year. So there was issues around, members will be aware, around us purchasing vehicles. The predominant reason for that was was Brexit, and actually, in addition to Brexit, so there was an issue around whether cars will be coming in or not coming in. But there's also an issue with regard to the emissions on Volkswagen vehicles per se. So they had to jump through particular hoops to get the various guarantees, if you like, which meant that whilst we could order cars, there was a significant delay on them. So that pushed it back. And in addition, we had the 2 turntable ladders that obviously the factory went into shutdown early March. So again, that was being delayed further than we anticipated. We also had some significant building works on the go through various sites, particularly Wisbech and others, that unfortunately had to be stopped. And once they've been restarted, clearly there's been a delay. Hence the reason why I'm asking to carry that funding over so we can use it in the current financial year.
Questions? Any questions on the capital? Right, no questions. We're being asked to approve the following recommendations: the revenue and capital budget outturn position, the requested budget holder carry forwards, year-end balance sheet as the 31st of March as the draft statement of accounts, and then in addition to those 3 recommendations is to note the annual Treasury Management Statement. Are you happy to so do? If there's any dissenters, we'll take a vote. Yes, Matthew?
Just briefly, I mean, the annual Treasury Management Statement, clearly it's a look back. In terms of any predictions, I would say who knows where things will go in the future. So it's just worth adding that comment, really. Obviously, with all the uncertainty around the future, the returns that we were getting, I think it might be ambitious to think we'll continue to get those sort of type of returns.
Thank you. And as an aside, and really for Councillor Hunt's benefit, because he finds himself in a catch-up situation, he wouldn't be fully aware of some of the work that's gone on. If circumstances permit, if you can find time sometime to sit down with Matthew Warren, because there's been some amazing work going on behind the scenes and saving us money with vehicles, and particularly with insurance. And I think you'll be quite surprised at some of the initiatives that have gone on in the recent history. I think it's fair to say that, Matthew, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've been quite progressive, Kevin. I would say I would say we're pretty forward thinking in our approach to most things, and we're willing to have a go at things that perhaps others aren't. So yes, Councillor Hunt, it'd be more than willing to have a catch up with you.
Good.
I'd prefer it when we were sitting across a table and we could see each other.
Well, we can perhaps meet somewhere close to you, Councillor Hunt, and we could have a coffee in a field or something.
Okay, yes. Okay, I will, Matthew, I will email you.
Thank you.
With some alternatives, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
If that's okay, I'll give you
Yes, of course.
4 alternatives.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think that was relevant. Okay, so we've agreed those report recommendations. Thank you for your cooperation on that. And now we'll move on to item 11, which is the estates update. And as you can see, Matthew has been very busy. So can I ask you please to introduce this report?
Yes. Okay. So been quite a lot of progress with regard to our estate over the last couple of months. So I won't go into too much of the background because most members will know it. Councillor Hunt, for your benefit, you'll be aware that we were talking around perhaps collating one of our training centre on a police site. That never happened. So this is around moving forward now on a site that is to be our own. So first one is around Huntingdon Fire Station and Training Centre. So just again to give members an update after approval in March. we're at the point where we have the land contract and the price has been agreed, which is in line with what was articulated to members in March. So that was just over the £1 million mark. That has been agreed, and we're just finalising the if you like, the detail of that, with a view for it being signed on the 13th of July. Simultaneously, we're looking to sign the development agreement on the 13th of July for the actual build of the new fire station and training centre. All of the relevant legals are being worked through, and LGSS law are helping us with that. But certainly in terms of the design and making sure we've got planning, we're pretty much we're slightly behind where we thought we would be. We're talking weeks behind. So I think at one point we were looking to have everything done by sort of the end of September. We're probably looking a month later now, owing to the obvious delays. But generally speaking, we're in pretty good place. And we're getting all of the appropriate advice we need at the relevant time. So it's a positive, and actually we should be within the next 2 weeks signed along the dotted line and ready to be on site by the end of the year. So that's I'll pause there, and if anybody got any questions on Huntingdon before I go on to the next item.
I can't see any questions, Matthew, if you'd like.
Okay, I'll carry on. Okay, so St Neots. So this one, if members will recall, we started this project off probably about 3 years ago, and for whatever reason, it was put on the back burner. However, now with the interim PCC in place, he's made it very clear that he doesn't believe there's anything that prevents us from moving forward with this project again. So we have dusted down the plans. We are working with the constabulary effectively with a view for finalising those plans. The station were consulted on the original plans. We're just looking to make sure they're still relevant. And then if that's the case and they're approved, it will be going to planning for an extension to the St Neots fire station with the refurbishment. So the fire station end up with a better facility that they have at the moment, with an extension on the front for the police, and obviously they'll have to pay the appropriate rental charges as a result of that, whatever that may be. But this is more of a partnership, a collaboration where we can work effectively together. And what that means is the police can sell their piece of land in St Neots, but they'll be paying for all of the improvements for their element of the fire station. So that's hopefully a very positive collaboration that we're moving forward, irrespective of any political challenge. St Ives, been a slight change at St Ives. So again, St Ives, we were looking to do a collaborative piece with the police. They're quite clear that they really need to stay in the town. That's where their area of risk is, and they want to probably site an office in town, but it's just a local policing office. So they're suggesting that we can move forward on our own independently on that. But I am looking to work with the health service in St Ives around the sale of the land at St Ives, because actually there's likely to be some marriage value in the sites being sold together, and those that you know St Ives will know that actually it opens up the site quite nicely near to the town centre, should that happen. But
Matthew, you're a bit quiet.
Sorry.
Yeah, shout. Yeah.
I'll shout again. So we're looking for effectively to get some marriage value with the health service. So I keep pressing that as we go, but I'll give members a further update as and when I have it. Cambridge Fire Station. We are working with the police now. They have made an approach with regard to utilising space at the fire station. We've said yes, that's fine, but you need to be specking out to us what actually that looks like, how much space you need, what are your exact requirements, and I am still waiting for that. But they're very clear that's what we're waiting for, and as soon as we have that, we can work it through. The crews all know, and they're quite
Music. There's music coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
It's gone quiet. Okay, Matthew.
Okay.
Please continue.
Yeah. So we're just waiting for the police to give us exactly what they need. So that's another collaboration that's moving forward nicely. And the last one, which was again something we started I think pre-business case actually, and certainly pre any judicial review process, was around sharing our property departments, and that piece of work is going to be kicked off again because it was stopped previously, again for whatever reason, but that's happening again now. The police have a new director of resources who is certainly quite keen to work collaboratively and sees the value in police, fire, property department. So again, I'll be looking to bring something back to members later in the year or early February with a recommendation. Are we going to move forward with it or are we not? So that's so there's lots of things all of a sudden we've kick-started again. Any questions?
Excellent. We've got Councillor Giles.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I don't know where this blue hand is, but I will find it eventually. Yeah, it's welcome news about St Neots. It's been dragging on years and years and years. Is there any plans to work in conjunction with the ambulance service, which is right next door, you know, making it just a fire and rescue and ambulance centre, really? Just makes it so obvious.
Yeah, we've approached the East of England Ambulance Service on a number of occasions, but they were looking to move their whole model, Councillor Giles. So certainly St Neots, whilst St Neots was going to remain a base, they weren't really interested in doing something more collaboratively at that time. That was probably about 18 months ago now. So I don't know whether or not anything has progressed from their perspective, but certainly what we find with the ambulance is they're so busy, they struggle, they really do struggle to respond to this type of improvement. But I'm happy to go back to them again and ask the question.
I think you should, because you know, the word on the street is that the management has changed. There seems to be a different outlook now. But I understand, you know, they're busy people, too busy for improvements.
Right. I think that's a fair assessment. It ever has been the case, unfortunately, with the ambulance service. Councillor Giles, at the bottom of your screen, if you press the participants button, that should give you a range of options.
Press what, Chairman?
Participants.
Yes, 22.
And something to pop up. Okay, good. Matthew, is there any chance of the Wisbech project being resurrected?
No, I think that in fairness, the Wisbech one in the end proved to be just too expensive. So for whatever reason, when the final quotes came in, it was disproportionately expensive to extend Wisbech Fire Station for what the police requirements were at that time. Hence the reason why I'm so keen to get the requirements spec this time for Parkside, because they ultimately need to understand if there's going to be adjustments made to the station, what the cost implications of those are.
Councillor Shellings and Councillor Maguire, then the Chief. Councillor Shellings.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Thinking ahead to the submission we might have to make in a year's time after the PCC has been re-elected or elected, I think it would be very helpful, and I'm sure Matthew and others would do this anyway, if we kept track of all collaborations that have taken place in the last couple of years, making the very firm point that we don't only collaborate with the police, but we do collaborate with the police. And I think that would be a useful point to make in the submission that we might be called upon to make. Thank you.
Yes, that's a fair comment, and it is something we're actively doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to offer the advice you gave to Councillor Giles, but you've already told him where he can find the blue hands. Move on.
Yes, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, but in an earlier item, Chairman, we talked about protocol for virtual meetings. And while I'm sitting here people watching, and I just think it's worth reminding members that this is being videoed and therefore is available to public, because it's pretty obvious that Councillor Scott is in another meeting, because I've been watching for the last 10-15 minutes. He's in the conversation. And it obviously isn't with you, Chairman, but it'd be worth reminding people that the public can, if they wish to, see this.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I'm not sure it was taken on board. but I fully understand the point you made. I will perhaps have a word privately. Chris, our chief, you got.
Yeah, I found the blue hand as well now. I just wanted, because I think Matthew did, I'm sure members are all aware, but I just wanted to reiterate that as a service, we have worked tirelessly in attempt to collaborate with the police. Very much we have been pressing for the last few years, and any thought that it was on the fire service side, or indeed members' side, that there was no appetite to collaborate needs to be dispelled, because that isn't the case. And I'm very much aware as the chief, I have the full backing of the fire authority to collaborate with the police on every area where it makes sense to do so.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes. We look for every opportunity, not with the police, but anybody really, anybody at all. Any other comments, questions? No. Right, you're asked to note the contents of this report at this stage. Everybody agreed to that? Yes, thank you. Then we will move on. What number are we on now? I've gone and lost track. We're on item 12, the Assistant Chief Fire Officer appointment. And the report was emailed out to you yesterday. You should all have it. Can I ask Chris to introduce this report, please?
Yes, Councillor Reynolds, would you like the Assistant Chief to lead the meeting at this point?
Yes, it's probably appropriate to do so, yes. Well, John, would you mind just leading the meeting for a short period?
When this item's over, Councillor, I'll send him a message to come back in again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's a short report, so I'm sure members have had the opportunity to read it. I think from my perspective, I'd just like to say that I thought it was a very good process. It was important that as a team, Matthew and I, as the senior team, had the opportunity to go out and look around the country to see who was out there and whether there anybody who we could to look at in terms of this position. So that's why the position was advertised nationally. We got 8 people who applied, and of that we took 4 through to the interview process. It was a 2-day quite intensive process where they did media interviews, they did presentations, they did a facet 5, which is personality profile interview, quite an in-depth one with Matthew and myself. And then on day 2, members of the appointments committee had the opportunity to spend some time, and it was some time with the candidates to make a decision about who they felt was best for the authority. So the result of all those deliberations was that John Anderson scored highly across all areas, outperformed everybody else, and certainly left myself in no doubt that he was the right candidate. And listening, as I was an advisor on the interview process with the members, I feel that they also felt the same, and that was reflected in their scoring. So you'll see that from this recommendation, it needs to come to full fire authority, and I would recommend to you that John is appointed as the new assistant chief. And I'm sure that the chair would like to probably add a few words to that.
Thank you. Yes, like the chief said, it was a very robust process. Certainly the interview process that the panel carried out on Tuesday was not an easy ride for either of them. We were quite probing, quite in depth, and it was encouraging to see the level of competence that we've got with our staff, those who are involved in the process. There was no doubt on this occasion that we chose the right person, and I strongly recommend to the Fire Authority that you endorse the interview panel's recommendation. But I'm happy to take questions. Sebastian.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I would second your recommendation for the appointment, and I would like to say thank you to the team that set up the entire process, because although we obviously only came in really at the end in terms of the interviews on Tuesday, I did feel with the papers that had been supplied and the exercises that have been undertaken that we were being presented with two excellent candidates from whom to make a choice. And I think that it reflects extremely well on the fact on the surface that even having done a national search, the best candidates were very clearly the two officers who came from home. And you know, we should perhaps get them all to sign now what are they called? Non-competitive. Perhaps Councillor Scott, as a lawyer, would be able to tell us what they're called. We want to make sure that we keep all of our brilliant officers. We need to get them to sign things saying they're never going to go anywhere else, because they'll be extremely attractive to other authorities, because they are obviously, you know, the creme de la creme, I think I would say. And I think that the successful candidate, for both candidates, we were spoiled for choice, but I think there was a clear leader, and very happy to support that appointment. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, those very fair comments. It was a difficult decision due to the quality of the candidates, but it was just slightly ahead, and it'd be a very good appointment. Are there any other questions or observations? I suppose the important thing with this as well is the senior management team feel comfortable and feel that John will fit in well with the team. And indeed, he's been doing the job for over a year now in an acting position, but it's all coming together quite nicely if you're happy to confirm this appointment. So, can I ask you, is there anybody who dissents from the recommendation of the appointments panel? No, well thank you for supporting us. Then we'll formally announce that the Fire Authority does appoint John Anderson as the Assistant Chief Officer. And if you could ask him back into the meeting, please. Janet, you wish to say something? You're on mute. You're still on mute. No, you're still there. You give up. I can't do it from here, otherwise I would.
Chairman, if she just touches her space bar and keeps it down, that switches the mute off.
I've got this box in the middle of my screen that just keeps going round saying waiting. So it makes it very difficult, and the top bar won't let me do any. Anyway, I just want to say that congratulations to John. I know that filling Rick's shoes after being such a great deputy is a big job for him, but I'm sure that the authority will work with him, and I know that he'll work with us, and congratulations and well done, John.
Councillor Jamil and Councillor Giles.
Yeah, I just, as someone who's part of the panel, you know, I'm one who's actually happy that we were able to appoint from within. But I think the beauty of the whole thing is that it opens up other positions for other people within the service. And I think that's only a good thing for the service.
Yes, well said. Councillor Giles.
Yeah, I put my hand up at the previous point, Chairman, but that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you can work it now. That's great news.
Yeah, I don't know how to take it down though.
Mr. Anderson, the Fire Authority is very pleased.
Press raise hand a second time and it'll come down.
Oh, will it?
Yeah.
He'll get there in the end, didn't
I
you?
will.
As I was saying, Mr. Anderson, the Fire Authority is very pleased to confirm the outcome of the appointments panel in offering you the position of Chief Officer Cambridgeshire. I know when I speak on behalf of the panel, we're extremely impressed with your performance, and I know the Fire Authority as a whole holds you in great esteem, and we look forward to working with you for many years to come. I don't know if you'd like to say anything to the panel, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. I'd just like to say I really appreciate your support, and I very much look forward to continuing to work with you over the next years that come ahead.
Well done, John.
Well done, John.
Yeah. Well done. We'll. So you're now officially the Assistant Chief Fire Officer. What a lovely feeling for you.
Thank you very much.
Now we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, appointment to committees. And can I ask Dawn Cave to introduce this report, please? Dawn.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, this has been updated to reflect Councillor Hunt's appointment to the Fire Authority. The only changes relate to Councillor Hunt. I did check with all the group leaders to see if they wanted to make any changes, other changes, but they didn't. So it's just the only changes relate to Councillor Hunt's appointments.
Okay, so any questions on these appointments? Yeah, happy.
Move the recommendation, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that brings the meeting to an end. There doesn't seem to be a need to use those further meetings we've got booked because there's nothing to be discussed in private. It's been a good meeting. There's been many positive things today. So the note from the PCC, no, from the Minister for Fire and Police, the appointment of our new Assistant Chief Fire Officer. So all in all, it's been a very positive day. Can I thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll keep you updated on anything that changes in the interim period. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Congratulations, John.